Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I am your host. And in today's episode, I'm talking with Grant Boyle from Fig Landscapes. Grant runs a design, construction, and maintenance company based in Byron Bay. And he's also the author of a new book that's just come out, The Guide to Better Gardens. So, in that, he talks about how the process that he goes through to design gardens and how other people can do it as well. So, we talk about that briefly in this episode. And we also talk about how he started in the industry as a bricklayer initially and then started landscaping and had a partnership before ending up going out on his own. And he mentions the importance of using a business coach in the early days of starting out on his own. And something I love that he talks about is how he builds his employees from within. So rather than putting on a qualified landscaper to add to the team, he'll put on an apprentice and then train them up the way that he wants things to be done. So it is possible to employ qualified landscapers, but your chances of getting a great one are lower compared to finding a apprentice who you can mold into do things the way that you want them done. So we discussed that in the chat as well, and also talks about the process that he went through to get the types of work that he wants to do. So again, just advertising the type of work you want to do is the best way to get more of it, and don't advertise the work that you don't want to do. So there's plenty of good tips in here in this chat with Grant. So hopefully you enjoy this chat with Grant Boyle. Grant, thank you very much for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. My first question for you is, how did you start in the industry?
Thanks for having me, Joel. I got my start 20 odd years ago now. I was like a lot of people, probably didn't really know what direction I wanted to head with my career in life. And my girlfriend at the time said, what about landscaping? It was a bit of a light bulb moment, to be honest. I kind of thought, yeah, that sounds really good, and got into the Saturday paper, as you did back then. Had a look, called up a few guys, and got a start with a one-man band on the North Shore of Sydney. And I loved it just from day one. Barrowing soil, bricks, digging, just sort of ripping in all that really hard stuff. I just loved it all, and didn't realise how much of a creative side there was, I guess, in the beginning. So it sort of brought all those elements together. Got about 3/4 of the way through the apprenticeship, and he sort of ran out of work for me and a mate who'd started with him. So I remember I went home that night and was telling my housemate, I've lost my job and don't know what I'm going to do. And he said, why don't you come and work with us? And he was a bricklayer, and then thought it'd just be something sort of to build, to fill in the gaps until I found another landscaping job. And 5 years later, I was like, I think it's actually time to get back into landscaping now. So I ended up getting my bricklaying trade, and then we were working on some high-end gardens, and I just, that opened up a whole other world for me, where I was like, wow, look what these guys are doing. And just sort of approached the landscape company and said, I'm almost a landscaper. And so I jumped back on with them and jumped in with them and went back at night, finished my Cert 3 in landscape construction, and worked for that company for a couple of years, and then went back with my mate who I'd originally done the apprenticeship with, and we sort of decided to go out on our own and formed a partnership with a ute each and a barrow and a couple of shovels, and no clue what we were doing. And just kicked off our little company there, and we lasted about 4 years together. And and then I started Fig. So it was a bit of a journey to get all that way around, but that's sort of how I did it. And then once I started out on my own after the partnership ended, I sort of realised that if I'm going to do this, I need to do design, and I wanted to go in that direction and do the design construction sort of element to it. So went and did my diploma of design, and 2 nights a week for a couple of years, and got that, and then just been kind of learning and growing ever since.
So was that guy that you had the business with, was he a bricklayer as well?
No, so he was doing an apprenticeship with me when we were landscaping.
Oh, okay.
And he went and got, when we both lost our jobs, he went and got another landscaping job, and that was my intention. But I got in with this bricklaying crew, and I just loved it. It was I loved the element. You'd turn up on site. We were building high-end residential homes, and you'd turn up and it'd just be a big slab. And there was always anticipation of when the brickies were on site, because, not just the stories that they'd tell and the shenanigans they'd get up to, but you'd see structure go up, and it'd always be a big change when they were on site.
Mm.
And I love that element of it, of just turning up, and then all of a sudden there's all these walls up, and then we'd go away. The builder would put the slab on top, come back to the second story. So, I really love that, seeing that process of that happen. And I loved working with the guys I was working with. And so, 1 year turned into 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess I was lucky to get my bricklaying trade out of it. I got a sort of recognition of prior learning. So, that's come in really handy with all the landscaping that we do and the hard elements. And I learned a lot from that boss as well. He was only a couple of years older than me, and he was running a crew of 10, sometimes up to 15 guys. Wow. And he just had a really good, savvy business head on him. Mm. And so he was a bit of a mentor, and I guess that kind of was another reason I stuck around so long.
So did you ever lay any of those handmade bricks that's pretty popular these days?
We didn't do so much of that. We did a lot of double brick houses, a lot of face work, a lot of recycled bricks, a lot of blocks. Yeah, there was the bricklayers was like super skilled. Like watching them do arches and chimneys, and there's a lot that goes into all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, because they seem like a nightmare to lay, though. I think they're Kraus bricks. I don't know how popular they are.
They're like a little brickette. They're kind of
thin. There's not a straight thing on them. There's just bananas all over the place.
Yeah, totally.
I find it hard enough laying a square brick, let alone one.
Yeah, there's definitely an art to it. It's like anything. It's a skill. Once you learn how to do it, you can tell a good craftsman because they make things look easy.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens with a lot of, on the block and things like that. People watch it and they go, oh, I could do that. That looks easy. That guy's not breaking a sweat. He's doing that with ease. But they don't see the 10 or 15 years experience you've had and the technique you're doing and all the mistakes you've made along the way that make it look easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Bricklaying especially, because I know how to do it. But when you see someone who actually knows how to do it, who's a bricklayer, they're just like lightning and just it's seamless, just buttering it up, putting it down, butter the next one up, put it down. Just it's like a machine doing it. So
that while having a chat with a the corner of their mouth.
Yeah. Whereas I'll lay a brick, get my mallet and the spirit level and start tapping it around and
I think the key is not putting down too much mud.
Yes. Yeah. And getting the right consistency as well, because I know that there's been some bricklayers in the past that get pretty angry when their consistency is not right.
Yeah, well, that all comes down to your labour, So I guess it's like there's a lot of similarities with landscaping too. It's the team you have underneath you with your labourers and your apprentices go a long way to helping the tradesmen. They can either be a help or a hindrance. And if they are hindering you, then it's really hard to get your job done. So the better you have the guys below you, the easier your job is. Yeah.
And what was the business called when it was the two of you?
That was called Stone Lotus Landscapes. So they're still operating. Andrew, he's one of my best mates. We've been mates since 96 or something like that, a long time ago. And he bought me out and he kept running it. So that's been going for 14, maybe 15 years now. Yeah, it's coming up to 10 years with Fig. So it's probably been about 14 years.
And what was the main reason behind splitting up? Because seeing how you both wanted to stay working for yourselves.
It was probably we weren't able to sort of separate our roles. We both really wanted to do the design thing, and it probably came more down to me at the time. I was kind of preoccupied with a few other things, and I was actually sort of studying on the side to become a school teacher, and I thought at one stage that I might go down that path. And I think I maybe just had sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out and wasn't super committed. Yeah, and Andrew just sort of, I think realised that and just sort of wanted to break away, do his own thing. And when it happened, I was pretty shocked. I didn't really see it coming, but it gave me time to reflect and be like, is this what I actually really want to do? And I made the decision. That was sort of, one of those sliding doors moments where I could have easily just walked away and done something different. Mm. And I sort of, I took a little bit of time off and went on a holiday and did some traveling, and came back and thought, no, I want to give it a go on my own. Little did I know what I was really getting into, but it kind of gave me the opportunity to sort of restart and move forward how I wanted to, see the business in the longer term. So I started working with a business coach pretty much straight away. We'd worked with him before with Stone Lotus, and he really helped a lot. Shout out to John Corbin, the landscapers coach. Yeah, he's a really great guy, and we worked together for a couple of months, and then did another stint with him again. And it was just good to sort of reevaluate and reassess what I wanted to do and where I wanted the business to go and what I wanted it to look like, which when it's just one person can feel like a bit of it's almost laughable when you're like, oh, I want the company to be like this and structured like this, and you're looking 10 years into the future, you're sort of going, oh, I just don't know how I'm going to get there, but you slowly chip away at things and build it up and just keep referring back to those core values and what it was, the reasons I started in the beginning, and try and stay true to all of that, and just play the long game, really.
Yeah, I reckon. It's good that you did get back into landscaping, because I reckon it seems like if you're quite creative, so it would have been a struggle going to be a teacher to sort of get that creative outlet.
I think so, yeah, and I think was the sort of driving force behind it. And it was like, as much I really like the element of teaching and mentoring my young guys in my team. I love that side of it, and I love watching them grow and develop. And so I kind of get that element of teaching anyway. But the thought of being inside a classroom with a curriculum that there's not really much flexibility within that, you sort of don't have much creative control, was, I think, the reason why I just, deep down knew that landscaping was what I really wanted to do. And that's what I really love about it. It's such a creative industry, from creating something with your hands, but also creating that idea, and you get to see that whole process come to life. So with bricklaying, yeah, you get to create something and build something, but you're working on an architect's plans, and you don't really have any say in the final look of it. But with landscaping, you just, you have this idea in your head, and then that becomes a plan on a piece of paper, and then, through a lot of hard work, that's implemented into something, and then over the years, it just keeps growing and changing, and there's something really magical about that. It just sucks me in all the time with landscaping. It's all I really think about and all I really talk about. Yeah, I guess my wife gets a bit sick of that, but I'm sure yours probably does. You don't switch off, you don't really talk about much else, but that's with landscapers, I think.
Yeah. If I'll give you a call if I want to talk about landscaping, because my wife couldn't care less about anything that I do. Like what you're talking about with the with teaching the curriculum, there's a landscape architect I know who wanted to teach people about landscape architecture. So he went to TAFE. So he was a teacher at TAFE, but it just drove him nuts because of all the planning and paperwork you have to do, and lesson planning and all this other stuff that's irrelevant rather than actually teaching. You just got to tick all these boxes. So so the way you're doing it is probably the best way to teach people is not doing it according to a certain government plan that you have to meet. And
absolutely, and I think the thing too about teaching apprentices and teaching guys on site is, they go to class and they sit in the TAFE classroom, and they learn they learn from the teacher, and they take some in, maybe some of it doesn't sink in, but at the time maybe they don't realise that is actually a valuable part of it. But giving them the space on site to do things and to make mistakes and realise why things happen and why things are important, and the steps and the process and how that all interplays, I think is just, is a really important aspect of it. And I love being able to stand back and just watch them do things, and the amount of times that they'll surprise me. You'll come back to site the next day, and the way they've done something and the detail that they've gotten, and it just blows you away all the time. Just, because early on we take a lot of time in teaching them and making them do things the right way and not cut corners and think about that whole process, and then it just clicks one day, and then they take that a step further, and it's just great to watch.
Yeah, yeah. People will always think that when they're an apprentice that you're making all this money off them because they're getting paid bugger all at the start, but you actually make that money when they're finished. They're learning because you're taking time to teach them things and they're doing things slow and you're fixing it up. So there's a reason to get paid that at the start, and then you get the value once you qualify.
Yeah, that's right. And then they're also getting paid one day to study. And you've got to give them that time as well and be super patient with them on site and let them make some mistakes, not any major ones, but let them make those small mistakes. And you kind of watch them when they're first laying like a stepper and, they're putting down 100 mil of mud when they only need 50 mil, and you're watching them tap it and tap it and tap it, and it won't go down anymore and it won't get down. Like, why won't it get down? Watch how much mud you put down, and then they sort of learn that, and then it just keeps going. And there's so much to learn. Like, I'm still learning all the time. It's just endless, really. It's just an endless trade. It really is one of those lifelong kind of trades that there's just so much to know that that's what I really love about it too.
Yeah, and if you look back on it, like if you had to go back and start in the industry working working as an employee in your company, it'd just be so overwhelming the amount of different things that you have to learn, because it's hard enough to learn one trade, all the different things involved in, let alone what all landscapers do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember when I started, you'd be on a job and wasn't until you were like 3/4 of the way through the project that the penny dropped and you're like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing, the set out and the footings, and you just got no idea what's going on. You're like, what are we doing? Like, and the boss would be like, get the tape over there, and you're like, where, what, measure off? You're just so confused. You just don't even know what's going. And you look at the plans and you've got them upside down, and you just there's no idea what's happening. So and that's funny to watch the guys, but it's also watching them get through all of that, and letting them know that, like, mate, it's pretty normal that everyone goes through that. We don't expect you to actually know anything, because how would you? And watching them make those little mistakes and watching the penny drop and all those realizations is just a pretty cool thing.
I remember in my early days, my boss asked me to drop the tailgate.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not holding anything. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't know what you're saying to drop the tailgate. So you just got no idea what anything means when you start. So yeah, I think that's something I certainly would need to, sort of cast your mind back to what it was like when you started, when you put on a new employer now, to realize, because it's hard, it's easy to get caught up in everything
That's right.
thinking other people should know it, but
yeah. But I love that too, because you kind of break it all back down to basics too. So it's a good time for you to reflect as well. You get someone new, and it kind of humbles you, and you've got to sort of bring it all back and go, okay, well, if I was going to learn all this, how would I want to be spoken to? How would I want to learn this? It's taught me a massive amount of patience. I remember when I first started running my own company, and coming from a bricklaying sort of background, like, you get screamed at all day. They would just yell at you, and that's just how they spoke to you, and it's just had to deal with it. There wasn't any like, oh, I don't want to be spoken to like that. That's just what it was. And I guess I sort of had that mentality when I started my company of, I was always yelling, and I was like, you need to just like calm down a bit, and now, like, when problems do happen, it's dealt with in a much more calm way, because you can throw your arms in the air and point fingers and blame people, but it doesn't really get you anywhere. So I always take ownership for every single mistake that happens. It comes back to me. I either haven't given the guys enough direction, or haven't explained something properly, or it all just falls back on me, or I haven't given them enough training. So I just try and take that approach and be calm, and know that mistakes happen. It's how you deal with it that really counts. And getting sort of angry and flustered doesn't get you far.
Yeah, and whoever's made the mistake usually feels bad enough about themselves. They don't need anything else piling on as well.
Yeah, and so what can happen too when you have that, when you're that sort of scary boss, or that guy that yells all the time, when someone does make a mistake, they don't want to tell you. So they might put a hole in a pipe, and they're like, shit, I don't want to tell him. So they'll just backfill it.
Yeah.
You know, so when you are a lot more calm and the guys know they can come to you and go, look, shit, I've, you know, done X, Y, and Z, at least you know what's happening. So
Yeah.
there's a lot more sort of open dialogue with the guys, and people are a lot more comfortable to speak up and, look, I've chipped this concrete, or I've done this or done that, and you can fix it straight away rather than finding out from the client 6 months later or something like that.
Yeah, when things get a lot worse.
That's it. Yeah.
So when you started Fig, did you put on an employee straight away?
Yeah, I kind of, I did. I had a mate who was, he sort of subbed to me for the first couple of years. He's probably one of the best tradesmen I've ever worked with. Just awesome guy, super relaxed, doesn't say much, but just really skilled tradie. And I was lucky enough to have him, and I had a mate who just moved back from Darwin who was a plumber, and he came and helped for a couple of months and got through the first sort of few projects, and then it was just Dan and I for a while, and then got another young guy on, and then Dan went off and did his own thing, and I put on an apprentice, and you know, I'd had got sort of other guys in between, but it was just me and an apprentice for the first sort of, you know, those sort of first 3 out of 4 years until I built the company up, and then I moved up to Byron. It was almost 5 years ago now. So my apprentice at the time, he'd been with me for a year, and I said to him, look, I've bought a place in Byron. I'm going to move up there in 12 months. You know, if you want to come up with me, then the job's there for you. And, you know, I said, I'm not going to go for 12 months. And literally like 2 days, I think, before I moved, he's like, yeah, I'll come up and give it a go. So I moved up, and I actually put him with my mate Andrew from Stone Lotus. So Tyler went and worked with him for 3 months, and I moved into the house, took a couple of months off, and just to sort of drum up a little bit of work, and then Tyler moved up and finished his apprenticeship, and now he's my leading hand. So
awesome.
Yeah. So you know, it goes back to that sort of investing the time in your apprentices and building the business from the ground up. That's where I've found the most success, and I guess it's sort of, that's why it goes back to one of those things, like when you first start, it's kind of, you know, you think, oh, I'm going to take on all this work. Oh, I need to put on a tradesman and all this stuff. And what you really need is to sort of build from the ground up. And there's just a lot of hours you've got to do in the beginning, because you can't be leaving site all the time. So you need to be there all the time. So you need to pretty much do your 40 hours with your apprentice and start building them up, and then doing everything outside of that, all your paperwork, working Saturdays, Sundays, whatever it takes. Because you know, you need to get those young guys in and build them up so that after 4 years they become, you know, a massive asset to your business. That's sort of what I've learned over the years, and take the time to build up those apprentices and build the team organically like that. One of the things I've found is when you bring in tradesmen, they can be great. Maybe the culture's not there. They, you know, can stir the pot a little bit, and that can just cause chaos, really, especially if you've got a big team and you're not around a lot. If you're off site and you're relying on the guys on site, one bad apple, you know, can just poison everything. And that's happened to me in the past. And, you know, the guys are pretty slow to tell you what's going on, and then sort of all this stuff comes out, and you're like, oh, okay. And then, you know, you've got to get rid of people. I'm sure you've seen stuff.
Yeah, and then once you've got rid of them, you hear all these other stories that you should have heard about while they were there.
100%. Yeah. So it's you know, the whole running your own business and landscaping, there's so much to learn on all the different, you know, you've got all the site building aspects of it, all the design elements of it, and then all the business elements of it, and then all the people skills that you need. There's so many hats that you need to wear and different areas that you constantly need to be working on. It's not just, oh, I'm a gun landscaper, I'm going to go and start my own business. You know, you constantly need to be kind of upskilling and upgrading everything in all of those different elements to run it successfully. And even then, things still pop up all the time where curveballs and things that you've got to deal with. But yeah, over the years, it's just been constant learning, growing, reevaluating, reassessing, planning, implementing, and just keep pushing forward. And I always kind of come back to, always remind myself, because it's so easy to want to just take on every job and hire all these people. You know, we get a lot of inquiries. We could probably triple the team overnight and do all these jobs. But I always think of like certain trees, like say an acacia grows really quickly, and within a year or two, it's this big tree and it's flowering and it looks great, but it's got a pretty short lifespan. Whereas a tree like a brachychiton, like a bottle tree, put it in the ground and does nothing for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden it starts to fill out, and then over time it becomes this big solid tree that is really hardy and can, you know, get through a drought and all this stuff. You can dig it up and move it, and it doesn't affect it too badly. So it's a lot more resilient. So it's always reminding yourself that growing at a, you know, a consistent but more of a slow, manageable rate is better than just kind of trying to take on all this stuff and too much work. So just always realigning with your core values, I think, is super important, and remembering why you started the business and the service that you want to give to the clients, because that's ultimately what we're doing. You know, that's why we have clients, because we're a service-based industry. We don't have customers. They're not buying the product so much; they're buying a service from us. So that comes a lot of the people skills that we have, and delivering that, you know, super high and finished all the time on each of our projects.
Yep, I haven't heard that analogy about the trees and the business, but that's one of the best I've heard. I love that. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's so easy when it's busy to just want to grab all these jobs and put all these people on, but you kind of not. It doesn't allow you to grow the culture. I guess if you already are a big company and you already have 20 employees, well, getting another 5, it's not a huge deal, I guess, because you've already got a pretty solid company. But if you've only got, say, 5 employees and you want to put on another 5, like that's doubling. You know, that's a pretty big move. Yeah, it's just, you know, there's a lot of things that's in play that you maybe don't realise, and you need certain team leaders here and there to ensure that things are getting done, and certain guys have to be on your side, not one of the boys, and you know, so it's a whole nother level.
Now, how many employees do you have at the moment?
The business is broken into 3 elements. We've got the design side of things, where I oversee all of the design, and I've got a part-time landscape architect and 2 part-time designers. The landscape architect is local in Byron, and the 2 designers, one's in Sydney, one's in Thailand, so they work remotely. And then I'm on site quite a bit as well, so I do all the project management. Not on the tools very often, but I do occasionally. And I've got 3 guys in construction, so I've got a leading hand, 2 apprentices, and then in horticulture, I've got 2 horticulturalists who do all our garden maintenance and kind of small works. They'll do little garden makeover kind of jobs and edging, planting sort of things. And my wife helps quite a bit in the background.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And what was the type of work? Like, how did that change compared to when you were at Stone Lotus and then working for yourself in Sydney, I think it was, and then when you went to Byron?
Yeah, so the projects that Andrew and I were doing at Stone Lotus were, you know, the eastern suburbs, kind of courtyards, inner west sort of courtyards. I guess what you probably find around like Carlton, you know, in Victoria, those lots of terrace kind of houses, crappy access, rear lane access. So we were doing lots of, you know, floating bench seats and barbecues and sort of things like that, full surrounds. And then when I started FIG, I sort of wanted to, you know, work more with native plants and more rustic, kind of earthy style gardens. So that was the direction that I sort of headed with that. So using a lot of recycled materials. And then yeah, that was kind of the ethos that I had. And then moving up to Byron, coming, like, I love the gardens in Victoria, like Mornington Peninsula and all that, like lots of sort of crushed granite and dry style native gardens. Like, I love all of that, and that's probably where I draw a lot of my influence and inspiration from, and those Californian style gardens. So moving up to a subtropical area, I was a bit like, oh, I don't hate tropical gardens, but they're not really my thing. So I've adapted my plant palette for sure about what I use, and we do lots of tropical gardens, and I love them. And there's actually a lot of native plants you can use in those. And but my style's been really well received up here. I guess it's just something different that people can connect with, and I guess I had a bit of a point of difference from, I wasn't just another tropical garden landscaper. So if someone was looking for something different, then I was supplying that. And the thing that I really love about working up here is that we get to do projects, in all the towns like Bangalow and Byron and Mullen and Brunswick Heads, which are, more your suburban style block, 600 to 1,000 square metre. Everything's within, 20 to 50 steps of each other. That's all. You can see it all from the back door, basically. And then we go 20 minutes into the hinterland, and you're working on, we've planted out 4 acres of garden with pathways, and so that's a whole different approach, where the fire pit might be 100 metres away from the house, 150 metres away from the house. So, and it's a real journey down to get there. So you've got a lot more space to work with. You've got a budget, and you look at it, and sometimes you're like, how are we going to make this work? But when you're using big machinery to do things and move things around, you can actually move a lot of material really quickly. You don't have this tight access. Nothing really gets barrowed. It's all just posi track, excavator. So lots of tube stock grasses and plants and bulking mulch and stuff in, and using a lot of gravel and things like that. So it's the two elements of it. You probably have something similar in Geelong, where you've got, homes in Geelong which are on a 600 square metre block, 700 or whatever, and then I guess if you went 15 minutes inland, you're probably on acreage and bigger sites, and it's similar to that. So you get to work on all those aspects. But I mean, that was daunting. I remember the first acreage project that I did, and I was just like, what am I going to do here? I've only ever really designed courtyards or small suburban blocks, and now I've got, like, the client wants, an acre and a half of garden. So there was a lot to learn in all of that, and it's been a real journey over the last few years. But so fine, we've found our feet now, I think, with our approach and what we like to do and the materials we like to use and all that sort of stuff. So it's, loads of fun. Love it.
Yeah, I've had people contact me to ask for a design. They said we're on an acre and a half and want it all done. I said, I'm not the person for you, because I've got no idea about that. That is not my wheelhouse. I'm too scared to take it on. So,
I guess, I mean, for me, it was, I'd moved up here and I wanted to try and do all the work. I didn't really have any work. We were sort of trying to take what inquiries we got. And I got this really good lead through an architect up here. So it was kind of like a leap of faith, jump in the deep end. And we either get the job or we don't. The client's either going to like the concept or not. And thankfully, we gave him a really loose, broad concept. And as we started to do work, it evolved, and there was lots of stuff that was designed on site, which is another thing that I really like doing. When clients are just like, just do whatever you want kind of thing. This is our budget, and working within that, I think you can really create some magical spaces, because you can just be creative and work on the site. Because, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it before too. You design something on paper, and when you go on site and maybe you've done the excavation, you start doing the set out, you're like, maybe this could work too. This is maybe a better idea than what we originally thought. And then you go to the client and be like, we just tweak this a little bit and change this. And so the design evolves. That's one thing that I've realised. And I think it takes a really talented designer to be able to create something that when you're building it, there's no changes that you can see. And I build for a few other designers, but not many. And I'm very selective at who I the gardens that I build for other people, and they're all really awesome landscape architects and designers. And when you get those designs, it's just amazing to be able to build that and get it and sort of see inside someone else's head and the way that they've approached it. I think.
Yeah, and also choosing the plants can be that's a tricky thing as well, because I find I've done a couple recently where I haven't picked plants, so I just went to the nursery and picked out things I wanted based on that. So then you're looking at more of the texture and the colors of everything, and I find that works. Like the end result is so much better than if I had have sat on the computer and picked them out there. So yeah, sometimes it's good to have everything already decided before you start, but other times it's good to make it work. You get a more natural feel about it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's sort of how I work. Is we'll have when we do a design, it's a concept. Unless we're doing a DA and councils ask for a planting plan, we do a concept which will lay out all the areas, detail. This is paving, edging. These gardens, hardscapes are really well resolved, but the planting is basically like this is all the garden. Maybe we'll put in the key trees, and then we'll just give the client a palette. This is what we think will work, and that's just all images of plants that I think will work. And this is a budget that I think will cover all of that. So I'll kind of work that out, how many plants I think we need, put it all into a budget, because so many things are seasonal as well. And depending on when you're going to do the garden, and it just gives you that freedom to change it 6 or 12 months time when you actually go to do the job. You don't lock yourself in, and I love going to the nursery. It's just like such a joy to do that and walk around and pick things. And one of the nurseries that we've got up here, they grow native plants, and they're every time you go there, they've got something new that they've developed, and or they've got something rare that they've just grown. So it gives you the opportunity to get all those things. And there's so many different sort of hobby nurseries up here as well that if you've got the time, you can go around, you can find all this cool, unusual, rare stuff that you can't even imagine that it's out there until you actually see it in the nursery. You're like, what is that? And they're like, oh, this. And I'm like, cool, we'll take it. So that's how I like to do it, and just keep that. It's just another element of creativity that you've got up your sleeve on site, which I think is really cool.
Yep. And before, when you were describing your style as being like rustic and I don't know if it was natural, but that's they're the words I was thinking of when I was going through your Instagram feed. And like, there's not a lot of hardscaping compared to like the gravel paths and the soft plants. And it's also interesting that you mentioned that you still do the tropical gardens, but they don't seem to be on your Instagram. So you're sort of promoting the work you want to do more of and that you enjoy doing more of.
I guess, I do. Yeah, for sure. It's also just down to, I've only got a small team, so we don't actually get through that many. It doesn't take much to book us out. So especially if we do a couple of hinterland projects, we might be there for 16 weeks. So there's already, what's that? A third of the year's already gone in one job. So I think even for next year, I think we've got about 8 projects, and we're totally booked out. So, and then out of those, it takes time for things to grow, and I don't like to go back until probably a year or two after. And it's just, I guess, just sort of depends on which ones that we go to. But we've got a couple coming up that are sort of getting ready to shoot that are a bit more tropical based. And I mean, we do a lot of projects that, we don't even go back and shoot them just for whatever reason. But it's more about attracting those clients, I guess, that I want to do more of those projects that I want, and aligning myself with the architects that I really like working with, and that's always been important to me, is having those alliances in business and cultivating and establishing those. I think is really important, especially when we're starting out.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing to do anyway, to put more of what you want to do on your Instagram, because I think it was quite a few years ago, Steve Taylor from Cos Design told me that there's only like 5% of the jobs that he designs actually go onto Instagram. So, and like anyone else looking at his work would think they're all amazing, but what he thinks is amazing is what he wants to put on there. So you've got to enjoy what you do more so than other people do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, that was something that I picked up early on. When I first started the business, it was, when you first start, you've got no content, you've got no website, you've got no real way to get leads other than say high pages or friends and family, or back then you could maybe put an ad in the local paper when people still looked at that. But there wasn't really a way to generate leads. So I kind of thought, well, what are the projects that I want to do? I wanted to do more high end jobs. Okay, well, where do people get like the stone for those jobs? Oh, okay, for Eco Outdoor. So I contacted Eco Outdoor and said, and I already had a relationship with them from my partnership, but I contacted them and said I'd love to, if you could put my name forward, just even for any small paving jobs. And because I'd just sort of studied design, you get a call from a client. They, in their mind, they were going to do 20 square meters of paving. But when you got out there as a designer and said, well, what about this and this and this? You then turn that small job into a bigger job. And that becomes something that maybe you can go and photograph. And then all of a sudden, you've got some content. And then you can, and if you're doing those things that you want to be doing, then now you've got content, the things that you want to do, and investing in getting a photographer. Don't take the photos on your iPhone or, with a hose in the pool. Get the detail that you want so you can really get those sharp photos and get them on your website. And even if you've only got one job on your website, if it's well styled and well shot, then you sort of, people can see what you're capable of, and then you just build it from there.
Yeah, that's what I noticed as well. Like, your photos are really nicely done. Like, the lighting's perfect. So you do a really good job with it.
Yeah, I've used the same photographer the whole time I've had the company. So she was actually a wedding photographer, and she was a friend of a friend. And I said, I got her number and I said, look, I'm after a photographer to shoot some gardens for me. She's like, I've never done that before. And I'm like, that's all right. Would you want to? And she was like, yeah, I'd love to. So she came out and shot a couple of jobs. And, from that now, I think all she pretty much, well, not all she does, but a lot of what she does now is garden photography. So, from me, someone else called her and someone else and someone else. So it's sort of built that. And she loves it because, she's come from a wedding background where there's so much pressure from the bride and there's people and there's all this movement, to now come in and just shoot something that is just serene and doesn't talk back, and you can take your time and you can wait for the right light. And so it's been really enjoyable for her. But I've just found that consistency has worked for me, and I always sort of, it's like with my suppliers, if I use them once and I really like working with them, then I'll just keep using them. I don't, same with my subcontractors, I don't fish around for the cheapest price, or I'm just not into that. I'm just all about the relationships and building upon those. And yeah, I'm sure that if I went to, say, another excavator company and said, could you guys do me a better price on this? I'm sure like some upstart company would say yes, but to me, it's not about that. It's the trust that you have in contractors and your suppliers, and that really creates that successful business. Because as you go on, you realise that, well, the company becomes more than just me or the director. It's all these people that are connected, that are creating these things. And it's like that with architecture and building. And the builder might be the boss of the company, but if you've ever been on a high-end house build, the amount of trades and skilled tradesmen that come in is just unbelievable. These guys just do their thing. That no one's watching them what they're doing, so everyone's accountable for their own work. And we've got a really strong building industry in Australia, and I think it's easy for people to, homeowners, maybe at the lower end of the market, there's some cowboys getting around, but as soon as you get up into that higher end of the market, it just doesn't fly. You can't be a cowboy. You're not going to last. So yeah, that's sort of our approach, and it's worked so far.
Yeah, and the good crews stick together, like the good bunches of all the different trades who work for a builder on certain projects. Like, we've got a couple we work for, and you see all the same other trades as well. And then as soon as one does something wrong, like they try to get away with something, you never see them again.
That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
because you've got to be right at the top if you want to work on those projects.
Yeah, that's right. And you've got to be accountable because that's why you brought into the job, because you've got the reputation and you're going to do the right thing and do a good job. And I think that it comes through with those companies that do high end work. You can see the level of detail and skill involved, and a lot of it comes down to all those unsung heroes, those trades that probably don't even get a mention on Instagram. It's usually just the builder and architect.
Mm.
And the landscaper, but there's so many other trades that have gone into doing things, and even the plumbers that we use and the way they'll do their pipe work, and it's all going to be underground, and it's just all so neat and well done and well thought of, and there's just so much skill involved in every trade. But I definitely think landscaping has a whole nother element to all the other trades, because it's yeah, you might not master every trade, but I think the experience you get across all those trades accounts for more than just mastering one trade. So there's a lot more skill that has to go into knowing everything, and it's really just an outdoor builder. I think you've got to have as much knowledge as a builder, especially if you're doing pools and those really hard element landscapes. There's a lot of levels to work out, a lot of subgrades to work out. That can be a really difficult thing for people too. So you've got to have a really mathematical mind as well. It's one thing just doing a garden on a totally flat block, but if you've got a 6 metre level change and there's lots of retaining walls and stairs, and you've got to work out how to do a cut for all of that, and you want to make sure you cut out exactly what you need to, because otherwise you're going to need a lot more concrete, or if you don't cut out enough, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. When the excavator's gone, you're going to be digging it all out by hand. So you've really got to bring your game when you're doing projects like that, and have that knowledge and that skill base is critical.
Yeah, I've said a few times that landscapers are like an outside builder, like you say, because you've got to get all these different trades in. And then when people ask, like, because not everyone is sure what landscapers do, because some do more than others and some do less. But basically, I'll tell clients everything that's outside the house, we do that. So
yeah, exactly.
or can organise it if we don't do it ourselves.
Yeah, that's 100% right. I mean, we try and do sort of 80% of it. If we are, if it's a small deck, we'll do it. If it's a big deck, we'll usually get chippies in. If it's some intricate timber work, we'll get chippies in. But my guys love doing timber stuff. Same with stonework. If it's a little bit of stonework, we'll do that ourselves. But a lot of the jobs that we work on, there's massive amounts of, the stonemasons are there for months. So yeah, we'll sort of bring stonemasons in. They're probably our two biggest trades that we use. Everything else we'll do ourselves. Like I remember when I was in Sydney, some of the companies there, like they get a concreter in to do their slab, they get a tiler in to do their tiling, they get chippies in to do the timber work, and all the landscapers are really doing is project managing and then planting it out, maybe doing the irrigation, and that works for some companies. But yeah, I definitely feel like doing it all yourself you've got a bit more control over it all. The guys are a lot more invested in it as well when they're getting to do it, and they're learning all the time as well. So yeah, my guys, as hard as it can be some days, super physical work. I think once you get to the end of the job, it's usually once you've spread out all the soil, all the hardscaping's done, and you've got all the levels, and then everyone just takes a big breath, and you get that plant delivery, and you just bring them all in. They're not even set out, and it just totally changes the vibe of the whole space. And then there's a whole nother level of excitement that comes on then as well. There's always a bit of a buzz around, when you start a project, you've got the plans and you're like, this is going to be a cracker. And then you've got to get through all the excavation and construction. And yeah, and then like I said, once you get to that planting stage, it just really comes to life. And, I'm sure it'd be like that when you do your show gardens, that, you're probably building it all and you're going, is this going to work? Is this going to look any good? And then once you bring all the plants in, you're like, yeah, okay, it is. Because it can feel a little bit bare and naked, and you've got all this hardscape and brown dirt, and you're like, oh, is this going to work? And then it all just comes together and is softened, and it brings that life to it.
Yeah, with my experience at the last show garden, I didn't think anything other than till the very end, because you just got your head down, bum up, just
Yeah,
like a madman, and then no, it actually looks good. That's nice. But
yeah,
what you're saying before about the like Sydney, those companies in Sydney who their landscapers sort of they subcontract everything. That's
yeah,
another example of the importance of growing your own rather than hiring like a qualified person, because you could hire a qualified landscaper who's worked for that company in Sydney doing their apprenticeship there, and
yeah,
all they've done is seen everything get done, but
exactly.
they don't know how to do it themselves. But they're qualified.
Yeah,
That's a tricky part about it. You can still get qualified without knowing how to do half the things.
yeah, that's 100% right. And I mean, even now, like we'll design something, and I'll show the guys the plans, and they're like, "How are you going to build it? How are we going to do it?" I'm like, "I don't know. I really don't know yet. Um, Maybe this way or that way." And and they've always got ideas like, "What about this or that?" And then you sort of go, "Yeah, okay." And so I'm always challenged myself on things, like the building side of things. That was never really my strong suit. I always came from that more creative side. The design side was always where I leaned a little bit more. I never wanted to just be a designer. I'd still love all the stuff on site, but that was probably just a bit more of the side that I leaned on more. But I love being on site and watching things come together and being built, and saws and drills and all the noise and the mixers going, and the tunes are on, and things are getting built and happening, and each day it comes together a bit more, and I love that element of it. But, yeah, I guess the design side is probably a little bit more where I just get a little bit more of a thrill out of that, I guess. And I also love that. I love presenting a design. So I love once you've gotten the design ready to go and present to a client, and there's always some nerves and anticipation about that. You maybe design something that's a little bit out there, or you put something in that maybe they weren't expecting, and they love it straight away. And they're like, "Yep, when can you start?" And it's just such a dopamine hit for me. I just love that. It's such a thrill. And I'm sure anyone in sales probably has that same thing. When you get a sale, it's always sort of lights you up. But I love that the clients are thrilled with it, and they're just ecstatic, and they're like, "When can you start?" And then now you got to figure out how you're going to do it, and that creates the whole next layer of it. So it's just to get that project from conception to completion is just so much back and forth and thinking, and I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. It's not just the time on site. There's all these other hours. Like I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's how we're going to do it." Or I'll get up I can't sleep, so I'll get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go take the dog to the beach, and think about things. No one can call me, no one can email me. It can have that time to get stuff done, and to think, and everyone's still asleep and it's still dark, and you're just always thinking, always into it. And I find that most of my mates who I chat to are landscapers. So that it's my life really. It's just there's no disconnection.
Yeah.
It's always something I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I'm lucky because I have 2 showers a day, and that's where I do my best thinking. So that's when I come up with ideas on how you're actually going to build that thing. That's when I'll work it out. So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love it. So good.
and just recently, you brought out a book as well
I did.
on like teaching people how you go about the design process. So how long has that been in the works for?
Oh, like as an idea, probably 2 years, 3 years, maybe as an idea. I've had it, and I hadn't really aside from my wife, I hadn't really spoken to anyone about it, because even until I released it, no one knew that I was going to release it, because, I mean, for one, I never knew if I was actually going to be able to finish it. It took probably about 12 months to put together. So to write all the content, and this was another getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and punching out half an hour or whatever time I had, or later at night. But I always find early in the morning I'm a bit better. At night I'm just a bit tired, but first thing in the morning a bit more fired up. So yeah, I just chipped away at it over 9 to 12 months. And as I sort of said to you before we started, my wife is the kind of brains behind it, Kirsty, and she actually deserves probably 90% of the credit for it. She put the whole thing together, and she's a designer herself, a fashion designer by trade, and she's just got a really great eye for detail and super creative. And so she pulled it all together and kept pushing me to finish it. You know, I got a bit weary towards the end there. You know, it's like when you're on a project and you've got that last 5%, you've got, as you're going through, you're like, oh, we'll get to that bit later. We'll get to that bit later. And then you get to the end and you've got all these little, I'll get to that later bits that now you've got to go and fix.
Like 2 weeks worth of work, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of like the whole thing wasn't all quite finished. And so I just really had to focus and get over the line. So she kept me pretty motivated and driven to do that. But yeah, it's just the premise of it was that I get a lot of inquiries from all up and down the East Coast, and we only really design projects that we're intending to build. We do a few up in Noosa, and I do a couple in Sydney for past clients and stuff like that. But mainly in the Byron Shire are the jobs that we design and build. But I was getting people in Victoria and south coast of New South Wales and Coffs Harbour, and you know, we want you to come and do our garden. And so I put together the book to be so that people could either use it as a DIY tool. So it's got a plant index and lots of ideas about all the materials that I pick and how I put them together, and planting and soil, everything that kind of goes into it. So if you had a little corner in your garden that you wanted to put some native plants in, you could use the book to do that. Or you could, if you were going to do a bigger project, you could use the book as kind of like an inspiration guide, where it's got already a formulated plant list with trees, shrubs, grasses, ground covers, materials that you can pick. There's a fire pit design in there, so you could go to your landscaper and go, this is what I want it to look like. There's a link to a Pinterest page as well, so you can pull all the images together. There's a supplier list, so there's lots of tools in there to help you get on your way. And then, yeah, you can pick a local landscaper and kind of use it to do the garden that way.
Yeah, awesome. And you had good feedback in the early days since it was released?
Yeah, I have actually. It's been really nice because, you know, it took such a long time to do, and I didn't really know whether people would sort of receive it well, but it's been awesome. Yeah, lots of people have been super into it, and I get lots of messages all the time and photos on this is the little spot we're going to do, and so that's awesome. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, cool. So, and what is the path of the business looking like in like 5 years' time? Would you always just have the one crew on the construction side, do you think?
Look, I've got a pretty big plan. I've always got big dreams. I can't really tell you what they are because I don't know if I'll get to them all, but there's definitely growth. I've got a growth mindset. So, yeah, there's different directions I want to take it in and growth, and I've got a strategy for all that. So, yeah, I mean, the idea is to grow the business for sure. Organically is always is sort of the approach. But, yeah, which direction it will head, I'm not 100% sure yet. I just take it one day at a time.
Yep. And how long since you've spoken with John Corbin, the landscaping coach? Have you used him?
John Corbin, we message every now and then, just as like a friendly kind of thing on Instagram or the odd text. Last time I did any training with him was probably going back 6 years, just before I moved up.
Okay.
Probably before I moved up to Byron, yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, he's awesome. John, he's such a good guy. He's just super relaxed, and you know, when you first start out and everything flusters you, and he's just a really level-headed. All right, let's break it down. Let's, you know, how are we going to get you there? What are you going to do? And that's another point I actually wanted to say was, you know, having a mentor is, you know, probably been one of the best things that I've ever done. Just having that sounding board that you can talk to about different ideas and business and life. And John he kind of becomes a bit of a mentor. Yeah, you're paying him to do it, but some mentors you do have to pay. But yeah, it was a great experience to really, it's hard work because you realise what a mess your business is. So there's a lot of work you've got to do to.
That's why I don't use one.
Yeah, it's kind of organised chaos, I guess. I think that's how I operate now. You know where you've got to put your time, and there's only so many hours in the day. You know, I'm still like to get my 8 hours sleep. I'm not Elon Musk who gets, they get 4 hours sleep or something, and they constantly work. I just that's not for me. So I know the areas where I've got to put the time, and if I've got a big deadline, I'll get up really early in the morning, and I find that hour in the morning, it's like 3 hours at night. There's no distractions. Your kids aren't coming in, your wife's not, dinner's not ready. You're in there, you just get it done. And because it's still dark outside, you want to just like get in and get it done. You're not like mucking around on your phone or anything. So just knowing where you're going to put your time, I think, is super important.
And is there any like business podcasts or audio books that you listen to? Because it sounds like you by the extreme ownership model. You mentioned that earlier.
I listen to loads of podcasts. I listen to yours every Monday. That's on the way to work. It's
one of the best.
It's always a highlight. It is one of the best. It's I really like that. So I listen to different guys like Jay Shetty, Ed Milet. I used to listen to Joe Rogan. Kind of gone off him a little bit now, but just kind of business and mindset. Rich Roll, just just guys like that are kind of promote wellness and business and how all that interplays as well. That's one thing I've sort of found over the years as well is, keeping fit, keeping that mindset and looking after your mental health is super important, because running a business is really stressful and it is really hard. And especially if you have a mortgage and you have kids, your partner's not working, it all comes down onto you. And so not being a reactive person, I think, is super important so you can cope with all the stresses, and you're not coming home as that like highly strung person, and you're able to cope with all the drama and the heat that's going on, and still keep a level head and get things done. And I think gardening and landscaping, such a good industry to be in, because not only is it super supportive, but you're getting to work with the soil, with plants, and it's a really therapeutic process in itself. So it's hard to, I usually find a hard day comes because of an issue with a client. It doesn't come because you don't like the look of the tree you got or something like that. It's usually comes from another person, the stress. Yeah, just being able to work outside, work with plants, and work with young people as well. Like, I still consider myself young, but some of my team, like I could be their dad now, and that's a pretty scary thing to think about. But you realise there's a whole level of responsibility on how I mentor these guys and bring them through, and the sorts of things that I say to them and teach them. So it's it's just endless. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, it's frightening. One of my I've got a school-based apprentice, and he's only 4 years older than my daughter. So, that's pretty wild. But
it's funny because I still just see myself as being like, I don't know, I guess like I'm 40. How old am I? 43. And I don't feel the day of 23, and I still kind of act like that in a lot of ways. And things, I'm still interested in all the same things, the same music, and I chat to my mates, and we go, what about you used to play in this band or do that? Oh, that was 25 years ago. What? Where did all that time go? And I've got an apprentice who's 19, and just it's just so funny. Every Monday we're like, all right, Jay, let's hear it. Come on. What'd you do on the weekend? Because I was in bed at 8:30 each night, so we'll pick it up.
Yeah, whenever we've got the radio on, one of my other guys, he's 33, and he always, whenever there's a band comes on, they'll be like U2 came on the other day. He goes, and he asked the 16-year-old, he goes, "Have you heard of U2?" He goes, "No, hasn't heard of them." All sorts of bands, he's never heard of them.
I know, that's funny. Yeah, there's a big gap there.
Yeah.
I mean, times have changed a lot. Technology's definitely changed things a lot, and it's still going to just change so much more. I mean, I don't even think we've seen the beginning of what is going to happen. I mean, in another 10 or 15 years, it's just going to be crazy how much technology is overlaid on everyone's life. So it's a good industry to be in because you're still working with so much of nature that hopefully technology doesn't change all that. But yeah, that's what I really love about the industry is the people and the plants. I guess just getting to combine those two elements, I think, is magic.
Mm. And last question for you, Grant: who do you think would be a good guest to have on the podcast?
So a good guest. I think it'd be good to chat with. I'll give you two. So there's another local landscaper up here in Byron called Byron Bay. It's a pretty distinctive name. But Brent's a really cool dude, and he's been up here for 20 years. So he's got, and he runs like super successful landscaping company. I think I was just chatting to him the other day. I think he's got like 20 staff or something like that. So, and he's a super relaxed guy. So I'd love to get the insight into how he does that. And also Paul from Exotic Nurseries. They're one of the big nurseries in Sydney, and just awesome guy, family-run business, and would just also love to hear about his journey and his childhood and what it was like growing up with the nursery kind of background and all of that. They'd be my two.
Yeah, they have one of the most photogenic displays as well.
Yeah, he puts so much time and effort into that. We've been using Exotic for since Andrew and I started 14, 15 years ago. And it's just been amazing to watch their growth and how the business has changed. And it's really, the sign of, a good business owner who goes with the times. And Paul has definitely taken, Exotic in that direction. And, when I was in Sydney, if I was ever stuck on what plants am I going to use for this job, it's just go out to the nursery, walk around, and you'll find some inspiration there. And, it's always such a good way. Just nursery visit is just the best.
Yeah. Oh, Grant, thank you so much for coming on. I absolutely love this chat. That's always why the ones that go over an hour is quite obvious because I'm sort of holding back questions, but it could have gone for 2 hours. We could do a Joe Rogan style, but yeah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, and look forward to following along, and good luck with your book.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Appreciate it.